Hello everyone and welcome to another cyberpunk video. Today I'm recording with my cat who doesn't want to go away. So today, as I promised before guys, I'm going to give you a video about cyberware, cyberpsychosis and all the cool things you can implant in your body to enhance your combat senses, your appearance, your sex life. And yeah, I'm going to base the knowledge in this video on Cyberpunk 2020 book. Where is it? Here's the book. Wait a second, I have to get my cat out of there. Okay, alright, so yeah, that's the book. This wonderful book, which you guys can probably get somewhere on eBay, Amazon, I'm not really sure where you can grab it. In Poland you can buy new ones in the RPG or fantasy stores. And as you can see, I have a Polish version, so I have to translate it to actually give you the proper names of it that will maybe make it into the game. So yeah, this book is the one that the Cyberpunk 2077 game is based on. More or less, of course, because they are changing some things a little bit to fit more into the modern 2077 times. But yeah, as I told you guys in one of my previous videos, in between this book and what is happening in the game, there was additionally a 2030 book, but it's not considered canon, and the Sleep Regret is not actively using it for the lore that they have in the game. I would read it so you can get some inspiration maybe, but if you want an actual things that will be used in the game, that's the one you need. Alright, but let's get back to the topic of the cyborgs. So when I will be using a term of a cyborg in these videos, I won't be meaning any sort of AI. There is AI in the world of cyberpunk, but it's a little bit different than we know from, let's say, Detroit Become Human. Basically, AI has different goals, it has different way of thinking than humans, and its main focus is to gather more information. So it's not like in the world of cyberpunk the AI is blending together with the humans that much. No, we're talking about humans that are implanting stuff into their bodies to turn into cyborgs, or little bit of cyborgs. It has consequences, obviously, which I'm going to cover as well, but it's something inevitable in this universe. The reason why people are getting this cyberware into their body is mainly survival, but the survival not meant as only the combat kind of a survival. Of course, when you are a solo, when you are an assassin, when you are often in brawls, in combat, when you are in army, when you are in police, you probably have to have some cyberware into your body to free combats oriented pieces to survive the encounters. But survival can be also interpreted into different forms. For example, as a person working for a corporation in your whatever industry you're working for, you want to survive in the job market by enhancing your senses, your thinking. You want to enhance a lot of things in your body just to be more competitive on the job market. Or let's say social type of survival. If you want to fit into the society, you want to follow the fashion, and it's fashionable to have some cyber implants. Looking just like this, like I look right now, it's not fancy in the world of cyberpunk. If you really want to climb on the top of the social ladder, you gotta have some of the tech hair in there or a different color of the skin maybe. These things are jazzy or trendy or cool, or however the youngsters call it these days. So in general, survival in many different forms, and imagine that every single part of your life can be enhanced with the cyberware. It has a high cost, of course, both health-wise, mental-wise, and money-wise, but it's mostly inevitable. Of course, there are people in the world of cyberpunk that do not implant themselves with stuff, but you have to be aware of the fact that you will have a huge disadvantage in comparison to other people in many different areas of life if you don't do that. So let me explain all the things you can implant into your body from the very beginning, and of course using Photoshop. Let's go. Before I will tell you more about the implants, let me explain you something. For that I will need two very fancy Latin words: sacrum and profanum. So these two words, you probably met them before in your life. They can be used to describe many things, but in this particular case I will use them to describe things that are sacred and profane. To give you a better example, meet Mary. Hi. Mary is your everyday woman. She's a typical human being living in the modern society. If you meet Mary on the streets, even in this attire, looking beautiful and naked and all, and you try to approach her and touch her, well, that would be highly illegal. Police would come and chop your hands off and whatever they do. And that's because Mary's body is a part of a sacrum. You see, in today's society, a human's body cannot be hurt, cannot be destroyed, cannot even be touched without people's consent. Obviously, yes, you can slightly push someone when you're going on the train, and the police probably wouldn't chop your hands off for that, but in general, human body is considered something sacred that you shouldn't touch without an explicit consent. So now that you know that Mary is untouchable, let's imagine a different situation. You're going to a party to your friend Steve, and your friend Steve has this houseplant. Hello! Houseplant gets more and more sexy to you once you drink a couple of beers, and suddenly you feel a big urge to touch it. You're approaching it sensually and you're doing your moves, and as much as your friend Steve may not like it and he may not invite you to further parties, it's not particularly illegal. So if your friend Steve would be worried about the state of the plant and that you will hurt it, he can call the police, but police will be like, oh, you know what, this is just a plant, we're going back home. You can touch Steve's plants legally because the plant in our society is a part of the profanum. It's just an object, it's nothing sacred, it's nothing protected. And now, as much as human bodies in most societies are considered to be a part of a sacrum, some objects can be a part of a sacrum and some objects can be a part of profanum. For example, if you're living in the Christian society, the sacred paintings or crosses can be part of a sacrum. Or in most countries, the flags or the symbols of your country can be considered this way as well. Depending on where you live, it can be legal or illegal to destroy them, burn them, or, do anything bad with them. But in general, people seeing you do that on the street will stop you. And if you go on the street and touch the plant, well, no one will stop you really. I'm not kink shaming, do what you want to do. To give you an example of objects being a part of a sacrum, let's take this BMW I met on the parking lot the other day. So the parking lot was very, very crowded, and I'm usually a good driver, okay? But in this particular case, I kinda slowly touched it and left a dirt mark on the overwheel plastic thingy. It was kinda easy to clean this dirt mark and leave no trace, but the BMW driver inside, well, he wasn't in the best mood for that and he threw a big tantrum and I had to pay a lot of money for this. That's because that BMW was a part of the sacrum, and so are all the BMWs and Audis, so never park next to them. So to sum up what you learned so far today, all human bodies are a part of a sacrum in today's society, while objects can be a part of the sacrum or profanum. Mostly profanum. It does work a little bit differently in the world of cyberpunk. See, imagine you come back home, you enter your bedroom, and you see this. Now, I know what you think, but if you have at least a bit of a decency within you, you will probably ask this beautiful woman, who are you? What are you doing here? Do you need some help? Do you want some tea? And after you ask these things, you can indulge in other activities. But when you go back home to your bedroom and you see this, I guess you wouldn't propose the tea or some help. I think you would just run away and cry. And that's because, well, it's an object, it's not a human being anymore. When you see an android in your house, in your bed, the first thing you think about it is, oh my god, it's going to murder me. Well, some of you may have a little bit of a different way of thinking about it, but again, I'm not kink shaming. So in cyberpunk world, the difference between this and this is kind of non-existent. No one knows when the humanity stops and being a robot or an object begins. Almost everyone is someone in between or something in between. And with that, the human body stops being a sacrum anymore and becomes a part of the profanum. That's exactly why in the character creation of the demo of Cyberpunk 2077, you could see naked bodies of the main character. It's not to cause some erotic or sexual thoughts, it's just to show you that they are, well, a mere object. So before you will implant yourself or before you will interact with any other implanted people, you have to think about the very crucial philosophical thing, whether to treat them as objects or as humans. But I know that you guys are waiting to find out how you can become more like an object and what funny things can you implant into yourself. So let's start with that. Say hello to Mark. Hi! Mark is your typical human being, and I'm using a full body model because, as you can imagine right now, you can implant things into every single part of his body and enhance every single function of it. A lot of people think that cyber enhancements and cyberware are only a domain of solos. So murderers, assassins, people who need that super reflexes, super sight. But in the world of cyberpunk, every single person can use these enhancements. Imagine you're a corporate. You never really fight, you never really go on the battlefield, you never really have to use your strength. But there are so many things you can enhance in your body to make your work better. Imagine some kind of a biochip that can replace all this caffeine that you drink during the day, or maybe some implants in your ears that make you able to hear the gossip from the next room. There are thousands of possibilities and everyone can make them useful. But let me show you some examples from the world of Cyberpunk 2020. First of all, you can replace your skin. Imagine that you can inject special chemicals into your skin to make it colored in a different way. Whether you want to be matte or translucent, or even if you want to have some patterns in there. But in Cyberpunk 2077, chem skin is already passé. It's time for something more hardcore. Imagine putting a whole new layer of synthetic skin over your actual skin. It's called a syn skin, and it not only can change the colors, but also emit lights or play music. Imagine walking around naked throughout the city with Rick Astley playing on your body. But of course that's not common. We could see that in one of the parts of the Cyberpunk 2077 trailer with the rocker girl walking on the red carpet and having this weird chromatic skin. So I would assume the synthetic skins will make its way to Cyberpunk game. Maybe without Rick Astley, but that would be very sad. But in general, one of the most common additions to your body that people are getting, whether you are a solo or just a very hypochondriac corporate, it's a biomonitor. It's installed on your forearm and it monitors your heartbeat, your blood pressure, and everything else that you need to know about yourself to measure whether you're healthy or not. Now, tattoos are also a part of the cyberware in the world of Cyberpunk, and if you have plenty of them, they do actually give you minuses for humanity. But tattoos in the world of Cyberpunk are a little bit more cool than in our world because they, for example, can emit light. One of the other cosmetic enhancements that doesn't really have a big impact on your humanity are the shift tacts, special contact lenses that can either have one color or change the color depending on the mood, outside temperature, and other factors. It's pretty similar with the tech hair, which can also change the colors depending on many factors. For example, when you're angry, they can turn red. And of course, you can implant the tech hair in many other places. And there are some more hardcore things that you can do to your body. For example, you can add yourself some gills. They allow you to breathe underwater, but not as well as if you would be an actual fish. If you're into diving, you can also install an independent air supply, which I guess can be also used in other situations. Now let's get back to the full body. I know that you guys are waiting for the specific enhancements in here. So we're going to talk about the famous Mr. Stud. Mr. Stud is an implant specifically mentioned in the Cyberpunk 2020 book, and it allows you, quote, to go on all night. And yes, it does impact your humanity. So the problem with that is, if you implant a lot of useful things to your body that will make you more attractive and more awesome in the bed, at some point you may just stop caring about sex in general and go on a murderous rampage. But if you want to have a Mr. Stud alone, that should be kinda safe for you. And speaking of safety, you can also install yourself a contraceptive implant, which makes birth control way easier. For those of you guys who are into retro stuff, you can also install tape recorder and some other recorders or players into your body. I mean, if you're really a huge fan of Netflix, I'm quite sure you can install yourself a little screen with the Netflix in there. If you're too much into X-Men and you always want to be like Wolverine, you can install yourself some enhancements to your hands. Tiny sharp fingernails are called scratchers. The little bit bigger ones are called rippers, and these ones are called volvers. If you're waiting for Vampire Bloodlines 2 as much as I do, you can install yourself some vampires. Vampires are the vampire-like fangs, and they do also do some decent damage. So if you're into biting people in fights, that could be an option for you. Imagine that you can replace your whole hand with any tool of your choice. And I'm talking about hammers, about bass hands. Some of these actually find some work in the heavy industry. So if you have a job in woodworking or in metalwork, you may actually have a friend or two with this kind of adjustment. No matter if you're into horses or cats or more cats, whatever animal you're into, you can get a little bit more like that in the legal facilities. Or you can just go to the local Bravo and find someone looking like this. I mean, I'm really not kink shaming. Alright, so this little presentation showed you more or less what kind of things you can implant into your body. But if you will pick a random person in the street of a night city and ask about the kind of a cyberware that person has, the most common one will be the interface plug. Usually located on your spine right here, somewhere on your skull or on your wrist. It's a hole that you can plug stuff into and not in this kind of a way. And you can connect yourself to data terminals, to various vehicles, to machines, to weapons, basically to a lot of different machinery or technological things around the world to control it more directly, to in general have a lot of more control over that particular machine. So interface plugs are very important for netrunners. Obviously they have those special links that allow them to explore the net. For the heavy industry workers, because they can operate all those machines using the interface plug. For dentists, they can operate all the drills using the interface plug. And basically for anyone who is anyhow using technology and machines in this world. Now if you watched Matrix, you may remember that Neo had the interface plug, and also he learned Kung Fu in a single moment using this interface plug. Interface plug is not enough to learn such a thing in Cyberpunk, but something similar is actually happening. You see, you can install yourself a cheapware, which has a lot of knowledge coded into it, and it can teach you some kind of a language or maybe Kung Fu. The difference in between the world of Matrix and Cyberpunk, though, is that you will never be a master of this particular thing if you only implant a cyberware. The chip can allow you to know Kung Fu in a medium sort of a way, but you will never be better than a naturally trained master of Kung Fu. As much as your brain can receive a lot of information about something from a chip, your body may not be adjusted to the same kinds of reactions that a master of Kung Fu has worked on throughout the years. So yeah, you cannot really chip yourself into being a master, but it's some kind of a little cheat to get you to some kind of a level. The thing is, you cannot actually advance to a higher level using a chipware and then training. You have to train from the very beginning. And additionally, the amount of chips that you can install are depending on your intelligence. So if you are dumb as fuck and you just want to make yourself a little bit more smart by installing a lot of different knowledge into your body, at some point your brain will be just like, I can't process that. Unfortunately, it's not possible to make yourself into a smarter person using implants alone. But of course, all of these cyberware, they have a cost. And we're not going to talk much about the monetary cost because, as the book states, let me quote, "The ambitious punk already knows at least 25 ways, most of them illegal, to raise that kind of a sum, but the other types of costs are a little bit more severe." Let's start with the medical one, the physical medical one. The medical cost is specified in the book for each and every single implant and can vary from no real impact on your health to a very huge surgery, which can ultimately cost your life. So some of these things that you can implant in yourself, the procedure is more or less like going to a hairdresser or maybe getting a small piercing or a tattoo. You can literally go to a parlor on the street where no doctor works, which has somehow of a sterile environment, and they can just implant you cyber hair or contact lenses or some tattoos, and you can just go in, go out without any effect on your health. And then you can enter the combat with the same amount of HP like you had before, and this won't really hurt you much. Then you have a little bit more complicated ones. So for example, if you want to install yourself an interface plug or install some kind of a chipware, you gotta go to a med tech team, and he will usually apply you some anesthesis or painkillers, and they will implant you this more complicated stuff, which will have a small effect on your health, but not that much. You will get a wound that will have to heal, but that's basically it. But then there are some more severe implants that you can get. And that's, for example, chopping off your arm to get the basso in there, or installing a plate armor under your skin on your chest. This requires a whole team of surgeons that operate on your body in a closed surgery room, which is sterile, which is in some kind of a hospital. So you need a full team of people to take care of you, and you need to rest for some days after that. Alright, and now let's get into the more severe and more known cause and consequence of implanting yourself too much cyberware. You see, the more cyberware you implant into yourself, the more you lose humanity. If you played Bloodlines, again, I have to mention this game in every single video I do. If you played Bloodlines, you may remember how vampires, by doing some evil deeds, they were slowly losing humanity and they were giving up to the beast. Finally, at the low level of humanity, beast takes over your character and you go into frenzy mode during killing everyone. You could say that cyberpunk is quite similar in this form, but it's a little bit more complicated in a philosophical way, because there's not really any beast within you. You're just turning less and less human, and ultimately you start to detest everything that is human. Making yourself a single tattoo or changing your hair color doesn't really make you inhuman. You're still very much human, it's just a cosmetic thing, so the cost of humanity in that particular thing is not that high. But if you change your whole body into something totally different, then you start to slowly detach yourself from the human part of yourself. The less human you are, the less empathetic you are towards other humans. And that's actually the stat in the game, it's called the empathy. And as much, of course, as with the visual types of cyberware, it takes a lot to make you low on the empathy. It goes a little bit faster when you implant some internal stuff into your body. Let me give you an example of two similar implants, from which one costs you a lot of humanity and the other not that much. When you are a combat type of a character and you want to enhance your reflexes, you can install this pretty common implant into your body called Kerenzikov. Kerenzikov enhances your reflexes, and it does it all the time. So imagine watching the whole world in the bullet time non-stop. Every single human being walking on the street is slower than you, is more clumsy than you. And you know that with your implant you can basically outrun every single one of them. You can probably crack the spine of this guy right in front of you before he will realize. If you are implanting yourself the Kerenzikov, you will have this sort of a mindset all the time, and this will of course impact your humanity a lot. In comparison, there's another implant which is called Sandevisten, which has the same effect, but it is turn on, turn off kind of a thing. So when you turn on the Sandevisten, you get this enhanced reflexes for a few turns, so you can, for example, use it in combat. But after that, it goes away and you can walk on the street normally like any other human being. This obviously doesn't have as much of an impact on humanity as the Kerenzikov has. And don't think that it's your choice alone. And don't think it's only up to you and you are in control of everything that you will implant into your body. The involuntary implementation is a thing, especially when you work in corporations. But also if you want to become this extremely enhanced human and you want to implant a lot of cool things into yourself, you may land up on the list. You see, cyberpsychosis, which is a state that you get into when you are very low on humanity, it's kind of close to the bloodlines frenzy, is a very dangerous state of mind which can ultimately lead you to a murderous rampage. Do you remember the teaser trailer for Cyberpunk with this beautiful woman with dead bodies all around her and Psycho Squad around her aiming guns at her? She was a cyberpsycho. She suddenly snapped, started killing people on the streets because she was too implanted to have any sort of a remorse towards these bags of meat that humans are. So to prevent this kind of a thing, the law enforcement has a lot of ways to track what people are buying and implanting into their bodies. Merchants are contracted by them very often. There are cameras, there are tech detectors on the streets which are detecting how much cyberware people on the streets have. And once you are on the list as a potential danger to the society, you might be called to a small meeting. It's a very nice meeting. You probably will get some coffee and a cookie to it, and they will tell you, listen boy, either you will get registered on the list of possible cyberpsychos, or something might happen to you in a dark corner of the street. So naturally, if you have a little bit of a reason, you will get registered. And being registered means two things. One, you're forced to go to the cyberpsychologist once a week, and that person controls you and that person checks out how you're feeling, what's your empathy level, and these meetings ultimately do make you more human in a while. And the second thing is they will implant you a little chip. This chip can be a tracker, so this will track wherever you are, so they will have control over where you might appear and where an accident might happen. It's not like these chips sometimes have remote detonators in them. Nah, that's a hoax, that's a rumor. But let's say that you somehow didn't get registered, you did implant yourself tons of stuff into your body, you do get the super low empathy and you enter the state of cyberpsychosis on the street. So let's say you are this woman in the teaser trailer of Cyberpunk. What then? Well, there's a special law enforcement group, they're called the Psycho Squad. It's kind of like a SWAT. They are very well armed, very well equipped, and people working in the Psycho Squad are usually extremely brutal and violent. Because the worst thing about getting a cyberpsycho is just getting it off the street. It's kind of normal just to kill them on the spot. Deaths happen a lot, but if they don't happen, you're being dragged, screaming, tearing off walls, to the therapy. And therapy is kind of like a very, very painful rehab. The cyberpsychologist, also called the psycho shrinks, puts you in the chair that you're being chained to just to keep you in place. And they use the very extensive combination of brain dance, which is this advanced VR that puts you in a different situation in your brain, drugs, hypnotics, psychosurgery, aversion therapy, a lot of different things just to bring you back to a more human state. They will slowly disassemble every part of the cyberware you have in your body to make you more human, and they will reconstruct your brain in the form that is most useful and helpful for the society. So after going out of this kind of a therapy, you may not be the same person as you were anymore. But I guess it's better when you compare it to a cyberpsycho who eats human bodies. Last but not least, I know that the cyberpsychos in general have this opinion throughout the cyberpunk fans that they are basically going into this frenzy and killing people on the streets. But it's not always this case. They might be compulsive liars, they might be into sadism, they might be extremely brutal, but they may also have extreme mood swings. They may blend into the society, but ultimately have so little empathy that they are just extremely dangerous for it. There's a lot more to it. And being a psycho may be a very interesting narrative thing. Cyberpsychosis will make its way to the game for sure, and I can't wait to see in what form. It will be very interesting to see the main character developing this very low empathy for the choices you make in the game, and ultimately becoming a psycho yourself. But anyway, thank you so much guys for listening. That was a little video about the cyberpsychosis. More cyberpunk videos and game dev related videos and other videos are about to come, so thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Remember that you can watch me almost every day at twitch.tv/Outstar, and don't get lost in the night city. Goodbye!